So before we start, I just want to say I am super honored and excited to make this video in collaboration with Produce Like a Pro. Guys, once you're done here, go check out my video that I did in conjunction on their channel, plus you get a chance to win this mic, so go check it out. So let's actually start off with the root of this microphone's design, which is AKG. See, Austrian audio is made up of the graduates of AKG, and this mic specifically is based on the legendary C451. So this is the OCC7, and it's based off of the legendary CK1 capsule by AKG. One thing about Austrian audio, what it's trying to do is figure out a way to make these legendary older capsules a little bit more consistent in a modern manufacturing process. So unlike the legendary C451EB, this is not using a transformer, it is transformerless. Oh, and by the way, this mic comes with a plosive filter. I know a lot of audio nerds out there, they hear transformerless and they're like, man, I kind of wanted a transformer. All the old microphones had transformers, old Neve consoles have transformers. They're cool, they're vintage. And yes, transformers are going to warm up the mid-range and warm up the low end and have a characteristically vintage sound to them. But here's the thing. They're kind of inconsistent. A transformerless design allows this microphone to be dead flat. It is a much more accurate microphone, and we can rely on a reference grade neutral tone a little bit more from these modern transformerless designs. So like I said, this microphone is flat, especially in the mid-range and the low end. If we look at the frequency response of this microphone, we have a cut where we would expect to see a cut, and we have some very calculated small boosts in the upper range. These are like 3 dB boosts, and that's not even in a lot of the upper range. It is a very flat microphone. Part of me is very interested in how they boosted in like the 5K range and the 15K range, and they left out this kind of gap in between. It makes me wonder if they're targeting sibilant frequencies, but I doubt it because this is kind of targeted as an instrument microphone more than anything. So I mentioned how this has a very accurate, very flat frequency response, and I'm going to explain why that is particularly important in a microphone like this, because this has 2 major advantages. One, this microphone can handle an extremely high volume pressure level, 156 dB SPL. So why is that important? Well, that's important because of point number 2. Small diaphragm condensers are much better than large diaphragm condensers at handling transients accurately. So if you want more information on this, I made an entire video on the difference between large diaphragm and small diaphragm condensers. I will link it up here. So what that means is, combined with a really high volume response on things like drums and cymbals, you're going to get very accurate high end even at really high aggressive volume outputs. A more rigid, smaller capsule is going to wave around less than a large diaphragm condenser capsule will, which will wave around more. That's going to mean less accurate response. It's also true for the low end as well. So when you combine that with this microphone's really flat nature, you're left with a deadly accurate microphone. So let's go over some of the more typical specs that you might find on this microphone, things you might find on the product page, before we go into the sound of this microphone. So it's got 2 options on the back for a high pass filter and also for a pad. It's got a negative 10 dB and a negative 20 dB pad. Then it has a 60 Hertz high pass and a 120 Hertz high pass, which is pretty intense. Now, one of the main causes of concern with small diaphragm condensers, especially when it comes to voiceover, is their high self noise. And I do have to say, this is not necessarily an exception to that rule. This has a self noise of 16 dBA. When it comes to a small diaphragm condenser, that is respectable, but is not particularly low. Now, this is not going to be an issue when it comes to just listening to the microphone and monitoring. You're not going to hear anything come out of that. It will still be silent. The issue comes when you decide to add things like a ton of compression and a lot of high shelves. You might do that to your voice if you're working on it in a mix, and even though it might be less so in voiceover, you're still probably going to add a little bit of a high shelf, maybe 4 or 5 dB boost in the high end, and also you're going to add at least a little bit of a compression, like a 4:1 ratio. So to test this theory, let's take one of the phrases as a sneak peek to the voiceover test we'll do later, and let's also just put it through a kind of a typical processing chain, and then we'll listen to the noise floor and you can judge for yourself. You is smart. You is kind. You is important. You is smart. You is kind. You is important. So getting into the tone of this microphone, speaking more in layman's terms than frequency response, I have noticed this is actually a pretty mellow mic. If I weren't looking at the frequency response, I would say that it has a kind of a mellow tone all around, which, you know, mellow tone might translate to being flat and neutral. I wanted to almost say it was a mid-range focus mic, but really it's not mid-range forward, it's just mid-range present. That's because there's not a lot of presence boost to kind of outshine the mid-range. So one thing you guys know about me is I tend to prefer brighter microphones on my voice because I think I have enough low end in my voice. But actually, when it comes to things like a guitar amp, I tend to prefer mid-forward sound. A darker microphone is kind of what works for me, which is actually why I love the sound of the SM7B on a mic cab. Well, this microphone is killer for guitar tones, and we're going to get to that later. You can judge for yourself. Maybe you don't agree. If you mix this thing in with an SM57 or an SM7B, you're going to be left with an amazing tone. So to sum up here, the OCC8 is a very flat, very accurate microphone all the way through all the frequency spectrums and all the way through a bunch of different volume levels. The key term here is deadly accuracy. It's not particularly bright. It seems to be tailored more towards instruments, but as you might be able to tell, it's going to do fine on your voice. This thing is marketed as more of an instrument mic, but as many of you guys know, I don't really believe in that. I don't really believe there's a mic for specific circumstances, only mics that fit specific voices and specific tonalities. But that being said, in my experience, it's mostly killer on electric guitar. So let's do some blind tests, and we're actually going to do the blind test versus the flagship Austrian OC818 microphone, which is a large diaphragm condenser, just as a point of reference. So let's do a spoken word test first, and I didn't know what to do, so I found a bunch of Visco Girl quotes that I'm going to read for you. And because we did a blind acoustic guitar test in the Produce Like a Pro video, let's do a blind electric guitar test here, and we'll do just a regular acoustic guitar test. You, New York, for being silent for once in your life. Never mind. You've yeed your last haw. You've yeed your last haw. It really be like that sometimes. It really be like that sometimes. Becoming a happy person starts with not needing everyone to like you. Becoming a happy person starts with not needing everyone to like you. Take the risk or lose the chance. Take the risk or lose the chance. You is smart. You is kind. You is important. You is smart. You is kind. You is important. When you're holding someone's hand and they start doing the strokey thumb thing down the side of your hand, how can you not melt? When you're holding someone's hand and they start doing the strokey thumb thing down the side of your hand, how can you not melt? Okay guys, I hope that was helpful. Please go check out Warren's video, the Produce Like a Pro video. I know many of you are subscribed. Analytics will tell me that. Remember, you have a chance to win this microphone if you go check out that video. Also, you can follow me here on Instagram at RealAudioHaze, and if you'd like, you can work on a project with me by emailing me at realaudiohaze@gmail.com. Goodbye.